Good evening. Tonight, wildfire-related forest closures are prompting complaints of government overreach. Are our smart devices quietly listening in all of our conversations? And our evolving tipping culture, gratitude or pressure? From Montreal, I'm Eddie Takalik.
And I'm Gary MacDonald. This is episode 46 of Night Talk. And just before we begin, I just want to point out something. We are testing another new piece of software this evening. So if there are a couple of little glitches or pauses or bumps along the way, that's what it's all about. It's a shakedown cruise, and you're part of it. And join in with us. So let's begin with a reminder. We want to hear from you. Post your comments, and we will share as many as possible. Honest, unfiltered Canadian, the conversations we should be having.
So as a society, we must do everything possible to protect each other, to protect our communities, to protect property, and of course, to protect lives. Last week, we issued a province-wide burn ban. That was absolutely necessary. As tinder dry conditions continue to persist from one end of the province to the other, the risk of wildfires increases. And the risk is very, very high right now. We've had briefings from Environment Canada about the near-term forecast, and there is no significant rain in sight. This means more dryness, and it means more risk. We're here today because the experts have advised, and we agree, that more precautionary steps are required. We have to stay in front of this. We can take steps while we are in the middle of trying to fight fires, or we can be proactive and try to prevent them. And we have chosen to be proactive and try to prevent fires. So based on the recommendations of Scott Tingley and his team, they recommended, and we agree with the following. Effective 4 p.m. today, we're telling Nova Scotians, stay out of the woods. We are restricting travel and activities that really aren't necessary for most of us. Hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles in the woods are not permitted. Trail systems through woods are off limits. Camping is allowed, but only in official campgrounds. The fine for violating any of these bans is the same as the fine for the ban on burning, $25,000. And if you're a smoker, for God's sakes, be mindful of where you're butting your butt out. If you don't, and you cause a fire, we will hold you accountable. So what does this mean if you have a home or cottage surrounded by a wooded area? We strongly encourage you to stay out of those woods, regardless of where they are. Please don't do anything that could unnecessarily put you, your family, or your neighbors at risk. This situation sucks. Summer is one of the best times in Nova Scotia, and we all look forward to getting outdoors and enjoying our scenic beauty that surrounds us. I get that, and I'm right there with you as Nova Scotians. But you can still go to the beach. In fact, that's a great place to be on these hot, dry days. Just no bonfires. If there's a short trail to get from point A to point B, like from the parking to the beach or to the lake to fish, that's fine. But that's it. No heading into the woods to spend time there.
Eastern Canadian provinces are imposing strict forest closures due to extreme wildfire risk, with Nova Scotia and Newfoundland Labrador levying huge fines, even jail time for violators. Now, supporters say it's a necessary precaution to protect lives and property, while critics are arguing it's an infringement of personal freedoms and possibly constitutional rights. And I apologize to Premier Houston for the typo in his graphic there a couple of minutes ago. Eddie, this was the Premier just over a week ago announcing a ban. They had no wildfires burning of any significance in the province at that point in time. But as you heard, all of the information they were receiving was that, we are a tinderbox waiting for something to happen. Now, on top of that, Newfoundland and Labrador, again, one of those areas where you don't hear anything about wildfires very often, and they've got a couple of dandies, including one that just keeps growing, and at last I heard was just approaching the outskirts of St. John's. Mm-hmm. Now, if you think the $25,000 fine in Nova Scotia was significant, wait until you hear what they did in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Despite the serious nature of what's happening, we are continuing to see reports of people setting fires, and in some cases setting fires intentionally. I don't know the word that I can use to say how I feel about this. Beyond troubled and frustrated that this is reckless and irresponsible behavior. So as we said, we have taken decisive action to help address this situation. Yesterday, we announced we would increase fines for violating the forest fire regulations, and as I said today, we'll share the details. So effective today, new fines will range from $50,000 to $150,000. For a first offense, when a ticket is issued, fines will increase from $75 to $50,000. And imprisonment in default of payment will increase from 3 days to up to 6 months. For a subsequent offense, fines will increase from $150 to $75,000. Imprisonment for not paying will increase from 6 days to up to 6 months. Where there's a summons issued, a first offense, fines will increase from $500 to $50,000 to $100,000 range, and imprisonment will increase from up to 3 months to up to 1 year. For a subsequent offense, fines increase from a minimum of $1,000 to $75,000 to $150,000, and imprisonment in default will be increased from up to 3 months from up to 1 year. It's very clear that these penalties for violating the regulations needed to be higher, and everyone needs to take this very seriously. And I think it's very clear that the size of the increases and the penalties, including imprisonment, that we mean business, and we want people to listen and take this seriously.
So like I said, if people in Nova Scotia thought $25,000 was a huge fine, wow. Now, on top of all of that, entering the debate is the Canadian Constitution Foundation, arguing the ban and heavy penalties are a violation of personal rights.
We're creating a culture where we value safety above any other value, including our fundamental freedoms, our freedom to move around our communities. When you describe everything as a safety issue, it means everything can be controlled. So some people will take a route where they don't have access to transit and they might not have a vehicle, so they take their bikes through a forested trail to get to work. And these are people who especially work in lower income jobs because they don't have a vehicle.
Let's have a look at a couple of things here. Let's start off with the forest bans safety or overreach. Public safety versus civil liberties, it's a balancing act, always is, especially in emergency situations. And I can tell you, knowing a number of people involved in emergency management organizations, they do not take any of this lightly. When they're making a recommendation or making a call, they do not take it lightly. Contrary to what some people may think, that's not the case. And the other thing to remember is not only are these people dedicated to trying to protect lives and property to the best of their ability, never mind what's, some of the politics involved behind the scenes leading up to this or after the event, but focus on the situation at hand. They do not take this lightly in any manner. Yeah. Exactly. And when you watch the training that's involved for them as well, which they're doing all the time, again, I can assure you from my personal knowledge that there are top level people, dedicated people, and they will challenge the politicians if there's any kind of a pushback as to, maybe do we need this restriction? Yes, you do. And this is why. Penalties with teeth. Well, here's the question. Are they proportionate? And I'd love for some of our viewers to weigh in on this one. Do you think like a $75,000 fine and 6 months in jail if you don't pay it? Do you think that that's a little heavy-handed over the fact that you violated a ban on either going into the forest or going into the forest and lighting a campfire or having a fire in your backyard when there's a burn ban on? Do you think that it's proportionate? I've got a few thoughts on that we'll get into a little bit later. Public perception, principle, mistrust, inconvenience. Yeah, on the principle of I have rights under the Constitution. Yes, you have rights under the Constitution, but you also have a responsibility in a democracy to use some common sense at times. Mistrust, this goes back to the conspiracy theories that started blowing up on social media during the pandemic.
Right.
And then you roll into all of the anti-vaxxers. Well, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, you know what? Think about the people that you're endangering by not getting your vaccination or not wearing your mask because you think it's your God-given right under the Constitution. You might be a little bit surprised at some point if some of this stuff ends up at the Supreme Court of Canada. And inconvenience. More than anything else, there's a growing, and it's unfortunately a very healthy feeling sentiment of self-entitlement in this country. And so, yes, a lot of people would say it's an inconvenience. It is until all of a sudden you have maybe an hour. They come knocking on your door, an hour to get out of your house, get out of the area, and you lose your house. Think about that for a moment. And that's a very good point. That let me go to our other shot here. Back on my right page, and let's do this and bring this up. Deborah weighs in right away with, ask anyone who has had to run for their life during a forest fire exactly what that feeling is like. And believe me, it's not something anyone really, really wants to experience at any point in time. Good point, Deborah. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a couple of other things, too, that I think we can run over before I go off on a tangent. Let me go back to our other page here. And all right, so no, it's not there. Okay, I'll come back to here. A couple of other things. The wildfire season severity. Canada is experiencing its second worst wildfire season on record.
Yeah.
With an area
Already.
impact. Yeah.
Already.
Yeah. And the area impacted is over 72,000 square kilometers. That was as of last week. That's equivalent to the size of New Brunswick. That's the entire province of New Brunswick going up in flames, if you want some kind of a comparison.
And that's in terms of Canada-wide right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. One province, if it was all centered in one province, the province of New Brunswick, it'd be wiped off the map. It'd just be one big black hole.
Yeah.
Then you have historical context. This surpasses the 1989 season and is about half the area burned in the record-setting season of 2023. Half the area so far.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have a lot of, pardon the pun, ground to cover before we get to the end of wildfire season. The official end of wildfire season is October 15th. And the ban in Nova Scotia is on until October 15th, unless unless conditions improve dramatically.
Or they can worsen.
Yeah, exactly. And as a matter of fact, they had a fire last night in the Bears Lake area outside of Halifax. Just boom, sparked up. I haven't heard what caused it. Could have been lightning. Could have been a spark from something. Could have been a tossed cigarette butt, or it could have been a Yahoo going in and, can't stop me. It's my right, in lighting a bonfire. Because already one person has been handed a $28,000 ticket in total in Nova Scotia, and the play on it was that he's a veteran, and he was handed a $28,000 ticket. And apparently he decided to go into the woods to prove a point.
Mm-hmm.
That he could do it and do it safely, and that there was no need to close off the woods completely. I don't get the mentality of this. And then I watched a YouTube video last night, and I went looking for it today, and it's gone. Supposedly anonymous, issuing a warning to Canadians about the wildfire bans and blah, 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 blah. I wish you could have seen the comments, because I was going to bring it up not for the video itself, because it's not verified that it's actually anonymous, but for the comments. Mm-hmm. Comment after comment of people who just not thinking before they type and then hit post.
Mm-hmm.
Just not thinking. Like, people, don't be so freaking selfish.
Yeah, and you know what the interesting thing is as well, Gary, is these individuals you're speaking about, or they've got their cap on, or their cape that says it's my right, my constitutional rights, and so on and so forth. As you were saying, you're going to have a constable knocking on their door to evacuate within an hour if they have that much. They're the first ones to request restitution from the county, the community, or the government to help them with disaster relief when they were so critical of the decision of the government to do what they need to do to protect everybody and to protect property and the land. They're going to be the first ones crying grief that I need help from the government because my house just burnt down, and so on and so forth. And you know what? I'm always adamant about you can't have it both ways. This is one of those situations where you can have it both ways. And like you were saying, think before you press that enter button or post something that makes absolutely zero sense and makes you look very foolhardy in public. And as you, Garrett, that infuriates me as well to no end.
$25,000 for a fine. Sometimes you really have to throw the hammer down in order for it to start to sink into people that we're not fooling around with this. And then you go over to Newfoundland and Labrador, and you heard how frustrated Premier Hogan was in having to sit down and say, we have to do this, because they had people going into the woods. They caught them. And the same in Cape Breton in Nova Scotia, the same thing. They were going into the woods after the ban was put on.
50% plus of forest fires across the entire country are because of the human factor. I mean, everybody's going to say, well, it's nature and it's lightning strikes and whatnot. Statistically, it's a little more than 50% of forest fires that get started in this country is because of human beings. And here's something I always go by. At a group of 10 people, you have 8 that are really fantastic, law-abiding, not selfish, think about everybody else, really, really great people. The ninth one maybe needs a little work and a little coaxing, like perhaps the threat of a fine, and maybe I won't do it. You're always going to get that one who will think, well, it can't happen to me. I'm having my kumbaya campfire here and roasting marshmallows because I'm on vacation. Can't possibly happen to me. Well, you know what, Gary? The chances are that 1 out of 10 is the one who's going to start a massive forest fire that can potentially cost hundreds and millions of dollars to the government. And at the end of the day, that is covered by the taxpayer, the moron who set the fire in the first place, right? So It's always one that everybody else has to cater to make sure that things don't get worse. And you know what? Hats off to our premiers of the maritime provinces, where you know what? They're not playing politics. They're not playing politics where they're going to make a decision based on what the next election results are going to be, whether they piss off their constituents or not. They're making the best decision at this moment, at a very critical point in time of the fire season, and everything is basically tender. Don't forget, Gary, much of the Ontario region and the maritime provinces, we're still recovering from some major ice storms, winter ice storms. There was a lot of stuff just laying dead, which is basically waiting for that one spark to come by and light everything up. And like I said, 50% of the time plus, it comes from somebody throwing a cigarette butt, deciding to start a campfire and sing Kumbaya or whatnot. So, you know what? Heavy-handed? No, I don't think so in this particular case. You know what? I think the rest of the population is going to realize that the government is not kidding around when that first idiot breaks the law. And they're going to leverage the full scale of the penalties of what the law permits them to do and fine them. And that's going to send a clear message to the other 10% of the people who are going to do whatever they feel like at the detriment of their neighbors and the citizens of a province. So, you know, hats off to the premiers on this one. And just to give you some context, I know you were saying that the total combined fires in Canada basically is the entire province of New Brunswick, which is huge. Just to give you an idea of the fire in the Newfoundland Labrador area, and this is a few days ago that I read this. It's about 5,000 to 6,000 hectares that are going up in smoke. Just to give you an idea of what that represents globally, this is basically the entire coastline of France between Monte Carlo and Cannes, the almost entire French Riviera that would be going up in smoke. Just to give you an idea of the size of this fire. North Bay, Ontario, all right, beautiful North Bay, Ontario. It's 5,300 hectares. That's a whole town going up in smoke. Brandon, Manitoba is 7,900 hectares. It's going to get there if they're not careful. Burlington, Vermont, Gary. Burlington, Vermont right now would be in utter smoke and fire. This is how big this fire is, ladies and gentlemen. It's nothing to sneer at. This is a huge fire.
Well, we have a comment now from Monel, and she says, what infuriates me is that some of these wildfires are caused by people doing gender reveals really seriously. Okay, yeah. Yes, indeed.
Wasn't the last one in California, the big one that they had that wiped out most of Malibu? What, the Palisades? Wasn't that started by a gender reveal, I think, in California?
One of them, yeah, you're right. There was a bizarre situation like that, and I somewhere there, yeah. And I was watching actually one of the tech shows that I watch, and they were talking a little bit because they had a Canadian on from British Columbia and talking a bit about the wildfires here and the smoke and everything. And as the host pointed out, he lives in California, and he says, "Well, we're not that far off from our wildfire season again, and look at last year and what happened." Right. So, right. Yeah, some of these Americans, and a couple of them that we talked about, members of the legislatures down there, writing letters wanting us to do something about the smoke. And you bring up a good point, Eddie, about the felled trees and everything from storms and that. There's no doubt that forest management plays an important part in helping to not necessarily prevent wildfires, but not providing the fuel on the ground that they need to become massive wildfires.
Right.
And as you say, we've had a lot of ice storms in certain regions of the country. We've had like wind storms and hurricanes in other regions of the country that have brought down trees and that. And in the forest management has to be stepped up to clean out a lot of that material, and also to do some controlled burns in more open areas to get rid of the material as well, the fuel, if you will. And the federal government has been negligent in its role up to this point as far as good forest management in the national parks. And a prime example of that was it last year that it tore through Jasper?
It was last year, I believe.
Yeah,
Yes.
like the years are going by so quickly with some of these events, and that was part of it as far as how quickly that wildfire grew. The other part of it is too that I don't think a lot of people realize that these fires, when they get to a certain point, they get so large, they start generating their own weather within,
Yes.
and winds and that you can't really count on. You can't really predict because they're just so volatile, and they do that, and it's amazing how these fires will burn. They'll go through a neighborhood, and they'll
in no time.
Yeah, and they'll take out 4 or 5 houses in a row, and on each side of those 4 or 5 houses, there are other houses untouched. It's almost like kind of like a tornado, a fire tornado has gone through on a certain path.
Yeah.
Now, they're talking about people sleeping in the woods in Nova Scotia. That was the Canadian Constitution Foundation spokesperson's one of the things that she brought up because of the homeless situation. Well, I think the first responders would much rather go in now during a ban and get those people out than having to go in as you have a wildfire bearing down on you. Yeah. Because then when you go into a rescue mode instead of just a search and move them out kind of thing, when you go into a rescue mode, you're getting into some very dangerous situations at that point because the fire is right there. And that just heightens the danger. And that's the other thing that a lot of these people, oh, well, I have rights. Well, yes, you have rights. And so does the first responder who's on the front lines fighting that fire, left his or her family behind, and something may happen. They may end up getting trapped by a fire and lose their lives. Have you thought of that? Like, it just bothers me that we have so many people that have gone down these rabbit holes of crap on the internet and social media, and they're so easily led around. They talk about those of us who are exercising some common sense and displaying some common sense as being, rabbits. We're just being led around. No. Take a deep look inside of yourself. You're the rabbit that's being led around, not the rest of us.
And I've seen some horrible comments on social media where they're saying, well, I'm staying in my home, I'm not going anywhere, and you know what? If I have to be rescued, that's their job. I mean, you hear comments like this and you say, are you for real? And are you running on full thrusters? What do you mean that's their job to come and rescue you? You're going to risk somebody else's life because of your stubborn nature? Human nature just kills me. And Gary, it goes back to my mathematics I mentioned before. It's 1 out of 10. It's always 1 out of 10. And you know what? The impact factor of that one individual could be tremendous if in fact something does happen where they A, start a fire, or B, a firefighter loses his life because he had to go in and rescue said individual, right? It's just, I don't get it. I can do nothing but shake my head and wonder about the intelligence and the selfishness of some individuals, unfortunately. They're like you say, they're among us.
Yeah, and the selfishness, that's a key factor as well. Selfishness, self-entitlement. Like, who do you really think you are? It's not the first time. I remember growing up as a kid, we had fire bans, and the woods were closed, and you were told not to go into the woods, and you did it. And guess what? The same as the pandemic, well, eventually, as they got everything under control and we could handle it better, things started to relax, and we're back to normal now. Like, where were they coming from with some of this crap? It just, sometimes I just want to, I don't know. Anyway, it's a really frustrating experience. I fully agree with the Premier of Newfoundland in coming out with the fines they came out with, and I hope the hell they stick to it. If they have to fine someone and throw them in jail, then do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
And really set an example. Because once we're over this hump, and at the rate it's going, it may not be until October anyway, like, it'll go back to normal. I was surprised there wasn't some kind of an uproar here in Montreal the other day when they announced there was a water ban in some areas of the city, as far as I believe it was watering your lawns and washing your cars. It's not the first time that's happened in the last.
It won't be the last.
Yeah, 50 to 80 years. It's not the first time. And as you say, Eddie, it's not going to be the last. As a matter of fact, like wildfires, it's becoming the new norm. So we might as well get used to it. And why would you, when you know that your water source that you're drawing from, why would you go out and wash your vehicle? Because you're using potable water to wash your vehicle. So we've got some comments coming in here. So let me just make room for them. And let's start. Manel came back and said, the last fire caused by a gender reveal was 2020. Thank you, Manel. We have Greg checking in here. Common sense is uncommon, as told to me by my father, Clarence Zed, in June of 1977. You cannot fix stupid. Oh, that's one of my favorite sayings, Craig. It's so true.
That's number 10 of 10, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. And Nancy comes in with, homeless encampments are an ongoing issue, sucking the life from rescue teams. Cleaned up and new settlements started. Yes. And even within city limits, some of those encampments are problems because they're using fires, and they have old propane tanks and everything, and it's a real issue. Okay, Greg comes back with 450 plus fires over the past year in fire encampments, Nancy. Wow.
Yeah.
That's just unbelievable. And Deborah says, I think Quebecers understand protection of the land. You know what? The last time I saw a map up of across the country, we only had 2 fires burning. That was late last week. I haven't had a chance to see an updated map yet. But yeah, only 2 fires in Quebec. I did, I swung around and did a double take. What? Wow. And our firefighters are going elsewhere in the country, especially our water bombers. Okay, and Greg comes back with, Gary, you remember the days when I was mayor, Renforth? We routinely had a flag up to tell people not to use the wells. That's right, because you were just on wells. In the water table. And there was a growing concern about the water table lowering in that whole area. They had, at that time, 6 communities. They were amalgamated into 2. And there are some water systems, but there's still a lot of homes on wells out in that area. And again, the water table, concerned about the water table. And when I lived in that area, back in the early 90s, there was a contamination issue involving perchloroethylene, the dry cleaning solvent, and it hit a number of wells in the area. They ended up having to extend a water system from a neighboring town to serve those homes. It's just amazing how quickly that sort of thing spreads. And then now we currently have 10 fires in Quebec, but none of them are out of control. Okay, so it's up 8 from the last map I saw, which was last week. I don't remember what day. But still, only 10 fires in a province this size with all of the woods that we have. And we've had a lot of what you brought up earlier, Eddie, of a lot of damage from ice storms in particular.
Big time.
Here. Yeah, exactly. So, wow. That's really, really interesting how that's playing out here. And in the fact that our water bombers, it was one of Quebec's water bombers that got hit by the drone in California earlier this year when they were down helping with the wildfires down there. So yeah, they're all over the place. And now we've called in the armed forces in I think it was Manitoba, and maybe BC, Manitoba, I think for sure. To help out fighting fires. There we are pulling in the armed forces to do this sort of thing as well. So it's just.
And I think Newfoundland also brought in 40, 50 military personnel as well to help out.
Yeah. So it's folks, please just do as you're told. It's only for a couple of months. There'll be next summer, but just do what you're told. And here's the other thing for a lot of people, and it could very well impact some of these people who are self-entitled and go about, ignoring the bans. Think about your insurance, and think about if you live in a rural area and it's, a wooded area. Think about whether you're going to be able to get insurance next year on your home. Just think about that. And maybe you'll stay in the house. Go downstairs to the basement where it's cool and watch your movies or something. Play some games or something. But think about that, because it's getting to a point where insurance is getting extremely expensive for a lot of people. And now getting to a point where more and more insurance providers are just walking away. Nope, not that area. Not at all. Too many fires, too much history, too many claims, and so it goes. And Greg says that's another thing, Gary. Eddie, in Nova Scotia, the drones are interfering with fighting the fires.
Somebody trying to get the great shot. It could be, for all we know, it could be a reporter or who the hell knows who, but they get in the way.
Right. And I can't even begin. I just can't begin, because my voice will be gone again and we'll be here half the night, and I'm not going to do that. But there are also regulations about whether you can fly your drones over certain areas like that now anyway. But why do you need regulations? Yes, I know there might be the citizen journalist who wants to try and get a good piece of video that it can pop on Facebook or YouTube, and then have perhaps a couple of the networks coming and asking for permission to use it on their newscasters. Find another way to make your mark.
Yeah.
It's just endangering people doing a job that's tough enough as it is. Like, would you want to be flying one of those planes? And in some cases, over some of the bigger fires, like a 737 loaded with fire retardant, and coming in and dropping it? Like, I don't think I'd want to be, for sure. Okay, Greg says what? This conversation makes issues with Trump almost pleasant.
Them's fighting words.
Greg, I would kind of lump them, those people and Trump all into the same chicken hen house. Yeah. Oh my God, this mouse is really touchy tonight. Sorry about that. All right, so I think we'll wrap up that conversation because we've got something else that's really interesting coming up. But first, before we do that, let's go here. Where did I go? There I am. And I want to ask you a question. And that question is this. Is your internet provider letting you down with throttling at peak periods or connection dropouts? We know what that's about. Switch to eBox Fiber Internet, pure fiber to your home with plans at competitive prices. Eddie and I have both made the switch. Check the affiliate link below and use one of the promo codes for a special offer. All right, Eddie, I guess we'll move on to segment number 2, and this is going to be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, from smart speakers to smartphones to smart TVs, Gary, many believe our gadgets are listening to our every word. The truth is nuanced. Always listening microphones, wake words, and privacy trade-offs are part of the modern connected life. Let's separate the hype from reality and look at ways to protect your privacy. Now review federal privacy laws and review and discussion. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen.
I apologize for that.
Yeah.
Trying out something here. So, all right, so we want to go to our screen with the privacy laws. Let's talk about the privacy laws for a moment. Federal privacy law. First of all, Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act. That kind of covers the privacy law. Must obtain meaningful consent before collecting personal information. I'm not quite sure how they define meaningful. Your data collection must be limited to what is necessary for identified purposes. Yes, that sounds good in theory. Organizations must protect personal data with appropriate security safeguards. Individuals have the right to access their personal information and request corrections. And organizations must be accountable and have policies addressing privacy. So that's the long and short of it in the federal privacy law. There's also the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Document Act, PIPEDA, or PIPEDA, however you want to call it. And that's the main federal privacy law governing how private sector organizations collect, use, and disclose personal information in the course of commercial activities. Now, smart devices collecting personal data, voice recordings, usage patterns, location, etc., fall under this privacy law.
Right.
Key protections under it: organizations must obtain, as we said, meaningful consent before collecting personal information, must be limited to what is necessary for identified purposes. Organizations must protect personal data with appropriate security safeguards. Individuals have the right to access their personal information and request corrections. And organizations must be accountable and have policies addressing privacy. Now, the other side of it is we do have some provincial privacy laws. Some provinces deemed substantially similar to the federal. Quebec, an act respecting the protection of personal information in the private sector. British Columbia, Personal Information Protection Act. And in Alberta, the Personal Information Protection Act. These laws apply to organizations operating within those provinces and may have some differences in the requirements. So, where do we go from there? Well, let's see. Let's see where we go from there. Oh. Okay, what is that? There we go. The digital charter. It's, from what I understand, under development. Stronger consent requirements, minimization of the data collected, transparency, and rights to data portability and deletion. Okay, and then we can go from there to our smart devices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they are listening. They definitely are listening for wake words, and they call it passive listening.
Right.
Yeah. Devices don't record everything, but they're always ready to hear commands like, hey, and okay. Data use and privacy concerns, even short snippets of conversation can be stored, analyzed, and monetized. And protect yourself. Okay, this is how you can protect yourself. By muting mics. And if you do that, then if you go, hey, what happens? Nothing. And then you start calling it everything that you can get your tongue around.
Yeah, nothing happens, but you know what? There's no guarantees that the mic is not actively listening to you still. You just don't know.
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole thing.
Reviewing permissions. Have you ever read the end user agreement fully of anything?
You mean the 5-page document you kind of zip through and click on the empty box and press next? Is that what you're talking about?
That's the one.
Yeah.
And they're getting longer, much longer. I have managed to get through maybe the first 2 paragraphs, and that's it. I'll be the first to admit. Yeah, it's like I'm just throwing my hands up and saying, I surrender. Yeah, have your way with me. But we really should, at the very least, especially now where we have so many resources at our fingertips that we can just, do a quick query, do it and get a summary of those end user agreements. You might be surprised at what you find in them sometimes. And then adjust your settings on your smart device to reduce risk. But again, it's like you mute the microphone and you forget. Mm-hmm. The other night, I put my phone on silent, and I went 2 days in realizing that I was getting voicemail. I'm thinking, is my phone on the fritz? It's not ringing. Well, no wonder it's not ringing, you dummy. You had it on silent all this time. Right. So, are they a convenience? I would argue, yes, they are a convenience. Are they constantly surveilling? Absolutely. But, in fairness to the smart devices, they are constantly listening. However, here's the other side. They do serve a purpose. They really do serve a purpose. And we know that there are some things going on, and we know that despite the assurances, especially in the last few years, that there have been situations where Google employees have been monitoring all kinds of conversations and questions and demands, and so Amazon as well. So, and I think there was one involving Apple at one point too. Mm-hmm. The company that really prides itself on privacy.
Right.
But they were trying to train that assistant of theirs, which it's as dumb as a post, and it's not getting any smarter despite all of the efforts.
Well,
despite all of the efforts.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, our technologies continue to evolve, and of course, the better technology is supposed to enable the betterment of mankind, right, and make our lives easier. It all comes down to, you said privacy. How much privacy are people willing to give up for the sake of convenience and for the sake of technology evolving to make our lives better? You know what? I don't think there's any way you can place a number on that. It comes down to an individual. How much privacy is an individual willing to give up? And I think the whole issue here is the individual in this particular case may not be giving up anything on purpose. It's in fact being taken from them without their initial consent. Because look, I've deactivated microphone access on pretty much every app that I have on my mobile, on my cell phone. You know what? Apps are deactivated. I'm not using the phone for quite some time. I got off on social media because there was just too much going on there. And not too long ago, I'll give you an example. I mentioned a name to my wife of somebody I hadn't spoken to, and I can't tell you how long. And the name came, and a name came up in conversation that she and I had. I didn't have my phone with me. I wasn't using it. My social media wasn't active, right? Next day, of course, in preparation for our show, I go through a few things, and boom, lo and behold, people you'd like to connect. And the first one was an individual I hadn't thought of in years, came up in a conversation a couple of days earlier with my wife, and there he was. So very difficult to believe that even if you turn off microphone access to the apps or turn off the apps and make it as private and indiscreet as possible, where you don't want the microphone to be tracking you in anything, it still happens. So if I was up in arms about my privacy 100%, like, oh my God, you know what, the sky's falling, I'd be pretty pissed that was taken away from me without my direct approval, unless I missed the fine print on page 14 of that document that I put an X to, and I said it's okay for me to use it, right? The non-disclosure stuff and the agreement. But I mean, that's what we're talking about. How much privacy is an individual willing to give up for the sake of using our technology that's available to us today? And it's different to everyone. Like right now, to me, that particular incident didn't really bother me. But that's not the point, is it?
Nope.
Right?
Nope. Deborah says the joke about the husband being asked by his wife why he was speaking softly in the house. He responded because Mark Zuckerberg was listening. His wife laughed, he laughed, and Alexa laughed. Yes. Yeah. But the other side of it is, Eddie, we're forgetting, yes, these things are tracking us to a degree, whatever that degree is. But we're forgetting that what we're doing online as well, most of these companies that are behind the smart devices at the moment have all kinds of information on us already through our online activities.
Right.
And things that we buy and all sorts of things like that. So there's some of that involved too. So I guess what I'm saying is that the smart devices aren't the only culprit. They're just another cog in the wheel. And you know something? I received an email today. Let's see if I can just bring it up quickly here, that I found interesting. And it's from, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a group of people who have formed a company, and they're attempting to build a new Canadian social media platform called Gander. And they had a bit of a media blitz last month around this. I signed up before this even happened. And I'm kind of hoping I get the email that I'm in the actual beta test, because I think they're supposed to start beta testing later this month or at some point in September. But the other side of it is one of the things that they've partnered with another Canadian company. And what they're saying is people are starting to wake up to the fact that our health data, business data, social data, just about everything is hosted on U.S. cloud tech from Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. This means it's subject to the U.S. Cloud Act and Patriot Act, and of course, the whims of an unpredictable White House, and potentially even business interests like Palantir. This is true even if the data is physically residing in Canada. So from the get-go, we started working with ThinkOn, one of the few truly sovereign cloud providers in Canada, though more are starting to appear, to host Gander and help us support a broader sovereign distributed network. We're eager to connect with communities from coast to coast to coast to help grow the Gander network while protecting our data and democracy. We're designing a pilot to host private self-governed platforms or groups, self-governed groups on the platform, but outside the main social feed. Think Slack meets Instagram.
Well, there is the other issue right there. Okay, goes just beyond the personal privacy. Is anything that we may say around the phone we believe is dormant, whether it's in casual conversation or serious debate about whatever is going on in the world, namely in the United States of America, will what I'm saying or what other people are saying around me be used for reasons, from a security perspective in the United States, for vile reasons, for who knows what, and use that information against you if you're traveling to that country? I don't know. Can those conversations be used for sinister reasons? I know people in the legal profession. They've got smart devices all about them. Is what they're saying in dialogue, in meetings, in discussions with customers, is that being listened to? Is that being recorded somewhere? Is it being used for sinister reasons? I mean, the list can go on and on and on. Aside from just private, casual conversation at a bar or having over a beer, a conversation about politics. Now you're delving into lawyers. You're delving into politicians, municipal. It can be that low. How much of your conversation is being listened to without your knowledge? That's what scares me the most, is the sinister element of the information that's being captured in these conversations, which are not supposed to be recorded in the first place, right? That's the scary part about it.
Mm-hmm. And more now, a lot of companies are building boardrooms that are completely soundproof, and you don't take any devices into that boardroom with you.
Or electronic jamming within that room too. Yeah,
right.
They have to. They haven't got a choice.
So that there's another area that the road that we're going down with this. We've become so good at it, and then of course just the other day, ChatGPT 5.0 was released, and it's supposed to be capable of a whole whack of new things as well. And here we are, we're helping ChatGPT grow as far as its knowledge is concerned, based on what we're asking it, what we're feeding into it. And how safe is that information? I asked it one day, this is very sensitive, this is confidential. Will it remain that way? Or are you using it? And it came back, and it was just something I made up, but I just wanted to see what kind of an answer I would receive. And it came back and it said, everything remains within our circle, confidential.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to believe that, but I don't. I really, really don't. So, now we're feeding images into it for various reasons. and now you can, and Google's video production side of AI is really jumping out in front big time, and we've talked about this before, but
Right.
It's making deep fakes very, very mainstream, very easy to produce, and very easy to put out onto the web in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And there's software out there to assist AI to eliminate any watermarks in the digital data of what you're actually looking at, so you'll have absolutely zero idea if it's a deep fake or not at some point.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. That's where we're headed, and it's. I mean, it's already happening. You've got those commercials, and the CBC has a disclaimer on its website now because they're using CBC material.
Right.
And it's like the Prime Minister on talking about this great investment opportunity he has for you. And the lip sync and everything is just amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing. So, and then look at what YouTube's doing. YouTube is auto dubbing videos now in 13 different languages. Like our everything we're doing now, since last week, I think it became available to us.
Right.
Every time we post a video or like one of our on-demand videos, it's now being dubbed over in 13 languages. And, that opens up a whole new world of viewers for content creators, for sure.
Right.
And I mean, I watched two. I watched one in French, like said France in French, and then German. And I mean, I had no idea how accurate the translation was.
What did it look authentic?
And it said it's still in beta, so it's not necessarily going to sound like your voice, and it didn't.
Right.
But even if it doesn't, still just the fact that that's available now, and it's just
it's
happening.
only going to get better.
Yeah, because I said, we'll opt in on this and see where it goes. I find this really intriguing, and who knows, I know we're getting hits now from different countries, which before we were mainly confined to Canada and the US, but more and more there are some other countries popping in, not a lot, but they're starting to show up. So, but this is where we're going.
Yeah.
And we're not going to have a whole lot of privacy anymore. The only way you're going to have privacy is to build yourself a room or a house with the electronic jamming and cement walls that are 10 feet thick, and maybe put it underground, right?
Yeah.
And away you go. You might be okay, but beyond that, it doesn't matter. Like you could be walking by someplace and they could be monitoring sounds on the street for whatever the reason, and part of your conversation is picked up.
Well, you might turn off your cell phone. You know what? I'm turning my cell phone off. I want to be as protected as possible. And if you happen to have a smart television in front of you that's got speaker capability, well, so much for your privacy. So, like you're saying, Gary, what are you supposed to do? Just shut every electronic device around you, collect cell phones at the door when your friends come in, and I don't know, put them someplace where you can't be heard.
Yeah, so in a lead case.
Yeah, in a lead case. So it's just unfortunate that a lot of our privacy is disappearing as we evolve with the technology and as we embrace it personally. So, the best that we can do is exactly what I've been doing. It's just, not allowing my microphone access to my apps, and I shut off the apps when I'm not using them. But I still know I'm not 100% safe. So you know what, just learn to live with it. Be cautious, maybe what you're saying around your phone. I don't know. I certainly can't do that, so I'm already in trouble.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes two
that
of
makes
us.
two of us. Yeah.
And on the other side, like it's amazing what ChatGPT is coming up with, because I've been using that for a few things and just experimenting with it. And it came back with a response one day, and I'm thinking, like, where did you get that? And oh, you mentioned it in passing 6 conversations ago, and I thought it'd be a good way of tying it in and make you feel at home.
Wow.
What? And that was before 5.0. So
Right,
there you
right.
go. All right, I guess we'll wrap this part of it up and get into another part, which is kind of an invasion of privacy in some respects too. But
Yeah.
first, let me just flip over here.
Gary, we don't hear you.
Oh, I managed to, sorry,
There we go.
managed
Hear you now.
managed to mute my mic somehow. Okay, so Eddie and I appreciate the support you have been showing by viewing and commenting on our videos and our live streams. We enjoy what we do, and we want to provide a venue for people to express their opinions. So if you want to help us, you can buy us a coffee. Any level of support will be appreciated. All you have to do is just scan the QR code on the side of the picture here, or there's a link down below in the description. And we thank you for your ongoing support, whatever it is. All right. So let us now move on to, speaking of coffees, this summer when grabbing a coffee or shopping, you might notice one thing. Nearly every transaction point of sale now asks for a tip, even when it's not a restaurant. Tonight, we dig into the tipping culture from Quebec's new rule saying tips must be based on pre-tax amounts to the creeping annoyance of prompts everywhere else. Is tipping fatigue real, or is tipping here to stay? Eddie, what's your thoughts?
Well, you know what? I can speak from a personal perspective. I mean, COVID changed a lot in terms of tipping habits, what merchants are doing to entice people to pay tips and whatnot. Just a little after, just prior to COVID and during COVID, actually prior to COVID, I went out on a private venture in terms of working on a project that develops delivery service, delivery services for restaurants, very similar to what you see today with DoorDash and whatnot. And you know what? To actually experience what our delivery people had to go through, I worked as a delivery person for 2 months, just from an investigative perspective, to understand the nuances, the trials and tribulations of delivery of food from restaurants. And that experience actually changed my tipping habits, more to the degree of feeling sorry for those delivery people. I do a delivery of $100 and somebody gave me a loonie. Well, that didn't really make me feel that appreciated, and I had that happen a lot to me. Believe it or not, Gary, there are a lot of people out there that are very inconsiderate when it comes to tipping some of these drivers, for example. So as a result of that sour experience, nowadays when I tip someone that actually delivers something, I'll be more generous and just reflect back to my poor experiences with that. But then by the same token, Gary, I mean, you and I regularly go have coffee with our wives, and what we'll go up and immediately, the person who's serving you coffee in the first place, when you're being presented with your payment terminal, it's already telling you, oh, press 15% or 18% or 20% or choose other. Now, sometimes I want to choose other, but then there's a lineup of 20 people behind me, and do I want to hold these people up while they're looking over my shoulder as to what the holdup is? Because there's a little bit of an activity that goes on when you have to enter your own figure in. So you'll just, type in 15%, 18%, and just be on with it. And it's almost to a point right now that you're almost pressured everywhere you go to provide a tip. Hats off to the organizations and merchants that actually have a button option that basically says no tip immediately, as opposed to having to go through 3 or 4 screens to basically say no tip, and that does happen. No, I don't know. I think right now, Gary, it's really going crazy. A lot of establishments are using tips to justify paying employees lower salaries because they're tip dependent, which is insane. And it's more of a North American thing than anything else. I mean, you go to Europe, people are paid living wages and don't really have to rely on tips to survive. Whereas here in North America, restaurants will keep their prices low, but then expect us to backfill their employees' pay through tips. From a restaurant perspective, it's always been traditional to tip here in North America. I mean, you have that everywhere. I mean, tips typically range between 12 and 15%. Nowadays, when they present the pin pad in front of you, it's 18 to 20%. They don't even give you a 15% option anymore.
Nope.
I don't like that. I want to be able to tip based on the quality of service I'm getting here. And they don't really freely give me that option as me to liberally use that option as like I did before. It's like it's already pre-calculated for you. Here you go. And then you have the waiter standing there waiting for you to enter something. So there's almost no privacy when you're actually trying to pay for something. That's on the restaurant side. My pet peeve, you know what? When I go to a grocery store and on the payment terminal during checkout, it asks me to provide a tip. Are you freaking kidding me? I've actually been to hardware stores, little family-owned hardware stores. You're checking out and they're asking you for a tip? Gary, this is getting a little insane. I understand in the services and restaurant industry, but when you're going out to any retail store and everyone is asking for a tip, you go to a baker, they're asking for a tip. I mean, it's just nonstop everywhere. And yes, you can say no, but it takes you 2 or 3 steps to say no in some cases. And that's what I don't like. It's almost like you're pressured into leaving a tip to subsidize a merchant's employees' wages because they're paying them minimum wage, or I certainly hope not below minimum wage, but it's whatever they're getting is not a livable wage. So they're dependent on tips. And I don't know, man. It's really gotten out of hand.
It has, and I'll tell you something, Eddie, a couple of things. First of all, there are some owners who will actually take a percentage of the tips from the frontline people, which I just find that totally wrong on so many levels. You slime ball to do that. Second, though, it has become an issue for me because, I worked retail. And I worked, one of my first part-time jobs was scooping ice cream at an ice cream store, ice cream and candy store. I can count on one hand, and actually at least 3 times where somebody offered me a tip. And I was so shocked, I would just say, no, that's fine. Thank you very much. But that's not necessary. And one person was really insistent. So finally I just said, okay, and thanked them. But, you go into some stores, even if it is a coffee shop, and you ask, you're just running in and you're picking up maybe a can of bubbly water, or a bubbly water, a bottle of bubbly water and a cookie.
Yeah.
You're actually going and getting the bubbly water yourself out of the cooler.
Mm-hmm.
And the person behind the counter just has to take the tongs, lift the bag or the cookie, and either hand it to you if you want it right away, or put it in a small bag, and that's it. Puts the terminal in front of you with the amount, and you've got 4 or 5 levels of tips. And like you say, most of them now starting at 20%.
Yeah.
what am I tipping for at
Yeah.
that stage? There was,
What about at
you know,
convenience stores? I mean, we've seen
yeah,
this at convenience stores.
yeah, exactly. I tip when I feel that the person, especially like in a service industry, has gone out of their way, you know, because I've had a large order, whatever, and they've gone out of their way to make me, in my experience, feel special.
Right.
They deserve a tip. They're hustling and they're, you know, working with you, and they're working to make you feel really, really good. So yes, I don't mind tipping there, but I'm not just going to walk into the average place now, whether, you know, like, I'm not tipping at a grocery store. Geez, half the time I have to end up packing my own groceries anyway.
Exactly.
Why would I tip? It's not the person's fault who's working there that they don't give them a packer. And I certainly can see that the prices have not decreased because they don't have packers, or that they've brought in the self-serve sections.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't use them. I refuse. Totally refuse. I walked into Metro one day, and the only cash open was the service desk, and they were busy with the bottle exchange or whatever it is that they've got going there now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just walked out. I don't need this. I'm not going to use that self-checkout for a couple of reasons. First of all, like I say, prices have not come down, and here I am packing or checking myself out and packing my own groceries. And secondly, I don't trust them. I just don't trust those machines, and the way that things can go wrong, and all of a sudden it's on you to prove that you weren't trying to pull something, instead of on the company and the machine to prove that it was you.
They're doing quality control on your work.
Yep.
Literally,
yep.
right?
Or they're charging you, like they're accusing you of, well, you didn't check all of the lemons or something.
Right, right.
They're accusing you of that. I don't trust them. I just don't trust them. So I'm not going to use them.
Yeah.
And I won't. And if it means sometimes that I have to walk out because that's all that's open, oh well, I'll do it.
Well, can you imagine? I mean, here we have the Europeans. I mean, in Europe you don't tip, okay? That's because they all make professional living wages out there as servers, people working in the service industry. You know, they come over here to North America to a restaurant or whatnot. Can you imagine what's going through their heads when, like, what is this 15% for? For what? I mean, a lot of them still freak out about it. And now that's pre-COVID. Can you imagine what they're being exposed to now when you're walking into a bakery or a convenience store or a grocery store that absolutely has nothing to do with the services industry when it comes to restaurants and that type of thing, asking for tips? You know what I'd be saying? What's become of this North American society? And I don't know, Gary. Look. I told you during my little story there, when I was on the road and I was delivering, and somebody gave me a measly loonie after I had 50 pounds of food that I lugged up 10 flights of stairs to give me a loonie. It's like that's a slap in the face. So you know what? That was my experience and my decision to be a little more generous when I'm actually going to a restaurant or somebody's delivering something to my home. But you know what? I draw the line where as soon as I step out of my house and I'm going in to buy something someplace or get served for something that traditionally never, ever, ever asked for anything, now asking me for 18% tip when I picked up the bag of chips off the counter myself, or like you said, pulled the cold water out of the freezer myself and presented it to the cashier, and asking me for a tip? What on God green earth? And you know what? That is very stressful for a retailer. It's become a stressful exercise to buy something. You know what? I'm glad that the government has put in some laws here in Quebec in terms of tipping based on the purchase value of what you bought at the restaurant before taxes. That's great. I would go one step further. I think that the government should regulate who should be in a position to ask for tips, and not just anybody who feels like asking for a tip can. I think there should be some sort of controls, because it's getting out of hand, Gary.
It's crazy. It's gone totally
Really getting out of
crazy.
hand.
And I'm, yeah, like, you know what? I'm just at a point where I'm getting my ass up in the air now more and more, and really becoming very, very selective in
Yeah.
who I tip and how much, because it has gone over. It has gone from gratitude to pressure. No
Yeah.
doubt in my mind at all.
Gary,
And Deborah brings up
the parking meter apps at some point are going to ask us for tips when we pay for parking.
yeah, no kidding.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. And Deborah brings up another point: stores that ask you for donations so they can get the write-off.
Oh yeah.
And some of their terminals the same way. Like, do you want to donate? Whatever. No, I don't. When I donate on my own privately. So, like anybody knocking on the door or anything else, no, don't come a knocking, because it's not going to be successful. I have organizations I will support, but I do it on my terms and on my time. And I won't be pressured. Like Loblaws at the superstores used to let minor hockey league teams and other minor baseball and everything like that, or other teams come in, and they'd be packing your groceries, which was usually a horror show, because it took them twice as long to get them bagged. And by the time you got home, the bread was crushed, the eggs were cracked, the whole shooting match.
Yeah.
And they were looking for money. Like, really? Come on. Loblaws gets off with not having to pay packers for the 3 days that they've got these people in.
Yeah.
And we're being, again, pressured into leaving or making some kind of a donation to this group that you really don't even know, and at the expense maybe of other organizations that you do know and support on a regular basis. And on top of it, one of the most frustrating experiences that you do on a weekly basis, and sometimes even more than a weekly basis, grocery shopping. So, no. I'm on an anti-tip crusade, and you can call me Scrooge, you can call me cheap, you can call me whatever you want, because I've been called a whole lot of names, and it doesn't bother me at all. It just runs right off. And I am clamping down on the tipping aspect of it. Big time. Big time.
Well, what do you think? What do you think about my comment that government should get involved in regulating who can tip and who shouldn't tip?
I think it's a good idea, because what's happening is a lot of these operations are buying their point of sale terminals from organizations like Square, and they're coming already prepared to start accepting tips. And I don't know how it works. I mean, I've had a Square account for invoicing, and I know what they take when you get paid through them.
Right.
So I'm thinking that they're not breaking out the amount of tips. I'm thinking they're just looking at the amount of money that point of sale terminal is taking in, and this is what we're shipping back to the merchant minus our take.
Right.
I'm wondering if that's part of what's driving it, is the fact that it's increasing their percentage that they're grossing from from providing
Good
the point of sale terminals. Yeah.
Right.
In the service. I don't know why I'm thinking that, but it's just one more aspect of it. And if that's the case, that makes it even more a more solid case to argue to get government involved to regulate these kinds of terminals and what they're asking for. Seriously, and cut down on the unscrupulous owners who are out there, and when their people do get tips, they're taking a percentage of their tips. Like, really?
Yeah.
I'm just gobsmacked by that one. Just gobsmacked.
You hear some comments from restaurateurs and saying, well, you know what, we take the tips that's given by our patrons to our servers or whatnot up front, and we're taking the tips and distributing them amongst the entire staff. You know what? I don't think that the cook is making minimum wage in the back, first of all. Okay. So don't give me this malarkey about distributing the tips amongst everybody in the establishment to back and when you're in fact trying to use the tips made at the front line to offset the salaries that you're not paying in the back on the order line in the back. It's just wrong. I mean, look, I'd like to think that the cooks and the support staff are paid well enough and actually have a living wage, and that the server staff, if in fact you are not paying them living wage, that if I'm giving somebody a tip for good service and decent service, okay, that the least that can happen is that these individuals keep that money. And you know what, Gary? There has been a few occasions where I will not give a tip on the point of sale device to the waiter. I'll pay exactly how much I paid for the meal, and then I'll have the waiter bend over and said, "I really enjoyed your service. Thank you very much." I'll take a $10 bill or $15, whatever the 15%, 18% is, and I'll say, "Here, this is for you. Make sure you put it in your pocket." Because I want that individual to be rewarded and not have to share their good work. And I do that very often, where just very casually get their attention, stick up my hand like I'm going to shake their hands and say, "Thank you very much for the service. You make sure you put that in your pocket." And I'll tell them that, because I don't want it going all over the place, or I don't want the boss to take it, like you were saying, right? So for tips, I try to offer cash, because that's straight in their pocket, which goes to our discussion last week that sometimes I like to hold on to cold hard cash. That's one of the reasons.
Okay. All right. And with that, Eddie, I think it's about time to call it a night. We managed to get through it with only a few little bumps along the way with the new software, for one thing, and I don't know why, but my mouse tonight was so touchy, like really touchy. Anyway, but we got through without, we didn't actually lose the feed or anything like that, so that's a good thing. And that's going to be a wrap on episode 46, from forest access bans to government overreach to smart devices that just might be spying on you, and the growing frustration over tipping fatigue. As always, our aim is to get you thinking and talking. Keep the conversation going. Leave your comments below as you watch one of the replays. We want to hear from you. Honest, unfiltered Canadian, the conversations we should be having.
And remember to like, share, subscribe to help expose our stream and channel to more people like you. Night Talk returns in 7 days. I'm Eddie Tekalik.
And I'm Gary MacDonald. Good night from Montreal.